We don't really hear much about NFTs anymore. Well, there's a reason for that. A new study has come out showing that about 79% of all non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, are essentially worthless. Now, I could sit here and say, I told you so, but so could many other people as well. A new study done by Dap Gamble shows that the vast majority of NFTs are basically worthless. And they actually compare it to a gold rush, which is very accurate. That's really a good way of putting it. They were worth a tremendous amount, and then suddenly their value has dropped to basically nothing. Data from the block reveals a weekly traded value of around 80 million in July 2023, just 3% of its peak back in August 2021. Of the 73,257 NFT collections we identified, an eye-watering 69,795 of them have a market cap of 0 Ether. This statistically effectively means that 95% of people holding NFT collections are currently holding on to worthless investments. Having looked into those figures, we would estimate that about 95%, to include over 23 million people whose investments are now worthless. So now that we've demonstrated that these NFTs are actually now worthless, the question is, what happened? And why did it happen? Well, being that it is something that libertarians were very excited about, that alone should have told us that it was either a scam or an inevitable failure. Now, Dap Gamble particularly gives the main reason: a lack of demand. 21% of the NFTs were spoken for. Now, in terms of there being a possible 100% ownership, that means of the 79% of all NFT collections, basically almost 4 out of every 5 have remained sold. This is a basic function of the market: supply and demand. People buy it and people sell it. The problem is that no one wants to buy it, because what actually is an NFT? Basically, it's nothing. It doesn't do anything. It's just, in most cases, a crappily drawn picture whose only supposed value is its rarity. Unless, of course, you have a massive market of very similar pictures and then overflood it with very similar items, then you don't really have something that's unique anymore. That's kind of the problem. Nobody wants to buy them because they're not worth anything, and they're not worth anything because nobody wants to buy them. Hence, one of the more ridiculous aspects of the market, and why we as Marxists reject the market as a way of measuring value, as a way of determining where resources should be allocated as a source of profits, etc. Now, they do say this very specifically: it is a stark reminder that while NFT space has introduced a revolutionary new model for ownership and the monetization of digital assets, it remains a highly speculative and volatile market. The problem is that while it is revolutionary, it's essentially a dumb form of ownership. And we could go into like a whole separate video as to why most of this is completely nonsense. Like why you would own something that was completely anonymous, but then you're the only one that's allowed to have it because you're the legal owner, but have no way of proving it, which is kind of the opposite as to how private property actually works. The point of private property is having like a deed that shows that you own it, and then having an authority to enforce the fact that you own it. Which is why you own title to land. You own you have a a mortgage, a bill of sale, etc. that has your name on it, that has your signature, that's proof of your ownership. But then to turn around and do that whole thing anonymously kind of goes against what the whole point of it was to begin with. And the idea of actually encouraging a highly speculative and volatile market is frankly just dumb. Yeah, it can be very, very profitable if you get in and out at the right time. But to deliberately create a volatile market means you're deliberately creating an inherently self-destructive market. To do that deliberately doesn't make any sense in the long run other than to make short-term profits, which would be the point of this to begin with, while putting nothing into trying to create a sustainable economy that would last over time and create economic growth, which isn't the point because they're just trying to get quick profits. Now, he does give ideas about how to make NFTs better, and frankly, I mean, the guy who made the study, and it makes basically no sense. I mean, they're the complete nonsense ideas, like using NFTs to preserve cultural value, like having like things of cultural value owned by blockchain technology. How what would be the point in that? If there was something with a very high cultural value, you could put it in like a museum or like a safe or something other than an anonymous form of ownership. That it doesn't even make any sense to do this. I mean, it doesn't. I can't even find a way for this to make sense in any way, shape, or form, other than to just simply create something you could do with an NFT rather than a practical application for it. In the thing he says, you could take it and make an NFT split like stocks, so you could have multiple owners of one thing, or even make real estate tokenized like NFT, and then getting rid of the anonymity part and then putting it on blockchain. Again, what's the point of that? You already have an entire legal apparatus designed specifically for property ownership. That's what a municipal government is. That's what a state and federal government is already there for, to enforce property ownership. What even is the point of putting it on a blockchain and then getting rid of the anonymity of a blockchain to prove that you own real estate, when that's already what the government and government records are there for? Like this, all of these things don't even really make any sense why you would even put them on NFTs when a real life version already exists that's even better, that does the same function. It just seems to me like he's trying to invent something to give a reason for NFTs rather than find, like he's trying to make NFTs do something rather than find out what it is that NFTs can actually do. Okay, so let's just let's put this in the Marxist view. Essentially, what happened to NFTs? Well, long story short, NFTs have no use value. Part of what makes things commodities is the fact that they have a twofold form of value: an exchange value, what you can exchange something for, and its use value, its actual utility. The thing is, an NFT doesn't have any use value. You can't actually do anything with it. And even if you used it as something that you could use to prove that you own property, the NFT still wouldn't actually have a use value. It would only be a signifier that you owned property that had a use value. See, that's the thing. NFTs don't have a use. Unlike something like a physical painting where you could make the argument that you have the use of being able to look at it and enjoy it. Well, considering that anybody can just screen cap an NFT and look at it themselves, the use value is essentially meaningless. That's the one thing that a lot of these NFT enthusiasts could not get through their heads, is that NFTs don't have a use value. It literally exists only to be exchanged. Bitcoin, by comparison, at least had some form of utility in that it could be used to purchase things. So it had some utility, even though the thing itself, the Bitcoin, didn't do anything. You just used it. It essentially had an exchange value. But that exchange value was far more liquid than an NFT, which something you just held onto because you wanted to hold on to it, because you wanted to own it. And then you treat it like a stock, etc., but it's a stock in an extremely volatile environment that's prone to great crashes like what we just saw, and then turn around and promote a volatile environment as somehow being a good thing. I mean, the whole thing, it's just crazy. It's just libertarian nonsense. But when he does start talking about what you can do with NFTs, he does kind of actually acknowledge that it needs a use value. He says, as the market matures, NFTs are likely to increasingly pivot from mere collectibles to assets with tangible utility and significance. In this ever-evolving space, the future of NFTs will be shaped not by speculation, but by genuine value and utility that they bring to their holders. In other words, give it a use value. So at least this guy, without really acknowledging that it's use value that it's missing, is saying that it needs to actually do something in order for it to have value. You see, that's kind of it goes into the mud pie argument that a libertarian, that I'm not saying this guy's a libertarian, I don't know what his particular politics are, but this is an argument that people that are pro-capitalist, particularly libertarians, like to make against Marx. They go in the head and they make a mud pie. Nobody wants to buy this. Ha, therefore you are defeated. Karl Marx, because I made a mud pie and nobody wants to buy it, so therefore labor cannot possibly be the source of value. Which doesn't make any sense, because it wouldn't be a commodity, because it's not something that's exchanged on an open market, but that's another story. So it has to have a use value. It has to be, you have to be able to do something with it, and you have to be able to exchange it. And that utility, that use value, does not exist in an NFT. And now he's arguing that there should be a use value to it, which is actually what you would want to do if you want it to have some kind of value. Now, a lot of people would turn around and argue, but what about stocks, like stocks in a company? You know, they don't have a use value. So therefore it should be the same thing as an NFT, and it's something that you just trade. In that regard, yes, in a very strict sense, but in another sense, stocks aren't quite the same thing, because there is a promise of delivering value or money in the future that was created by others' labor in the production process. You buy stocks, not just so that you can sell it for more in the future, which would also be very much a criticism, because it doesn't have any use value either. But at least that money that you put up in a stock could be used to begin a business and begin a round of production, which would use human labor, that would create value by carrying out the production process with human labor. Other ones, like say being paid out a dividend, you would be getting a portion of the value created by the laborer back. So it's not exactly the same thing as an NFT. The problem here is the deviation between price and value, which is one of the sources of crisis in capitalism that Marx outlined. When price does deviate from value, you begin to head into a crisis situation, like we just saw with NFTs right here. All of this entire situation with NFTs was perfectly predictable, and you didn't even need a Marxist analysis to see that. You have a valueless asset. It doesn't do anything. It's not good for anything. You can't do anything with it. Never mind Marx's definition of use value. Even regular, everyday, real-world capitalists who reject Marx's theory acknowledge that these things were just something, yeah, I promise this will be worth more in the future. Okay, why? Why would it be worth more in the future? Oh, because people will want it. Okay, why would people want it? Because it'd be worth more. And then it becomes an entire nonsensical circular reasoning. A stock is theoretically worth more in the future because the company will be more successful and will have a higher rate of return on their. In other words, the company will be more valuable because it'll be making a higher profit. That's the point. But with NFTs, there's nothing. It's just, oh, this will be worth more in the future because it'll be worth more in the future, which makes the whole thing completely nonsensical. But that's the kind of thing that we do expect kind of from capitalism itself. That's a logical extension of its ideological basis. I mean, let's be honest here. This is pretty much an extension of libertarianism. This is not much of a not very far of an extension from Bitcoin itself. Not that much of an extension from we're all going to just have 3D printers and then we'll just 3D print everything and then trade everything in this kind of libertarian utopian market. You know, the one that we were told we were going to get back in 2013 when Bitcoin and 3D printers first came out, and then it was going to be the death of the US dollar because Bitcoin was going to overtake it and it was going to destroy the main global currencies, and everybody was going to be Bitcoin millionaires because the whole world will want to trade off of Bitcoin instead of the US dollar. Because nothing screams pure utility like a money that you can't essentially prove that you own, that has no guaranteeing value behind it. As much as you don't want to like the U.S. government as being a value behind the dollar, it's still a value and it's still an authority that wields a considerable amount of power, whereas Bitcoin doesn't have anything that guarantees its value, which is why it kept crashing. But tangent aside, that's basically what happened with NFTs. It had no use value, and because it had no use value, it ended up as essentially useless. This again reinforces what Marx said about commodities. They have to have the twofold form of value, both a use value and an exchange value. And in this case with NFT, they don't have a use value.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.